thank you all for joining us this morning. This morning's presentation is called Haunted Hotels of New England. From the Witch City's Hawthorne Hotel in Salem to the spectacular Biltmore in Providence to the blood-stained Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River, travel all over New England in search of the 13 most haunted hotels with Sam Beltruis, who's the author of the appropriately named 13 Most Haunted Hotels and Inns in New England. Sam, who's the author of Ghosts of Boston and Ghosts of Salem, has penned more than a dozen paranormal-themed books, also including Mass Murders and The Ghosts of the American Revolution. He has been featured on several national TV shows, including the Travel Channel's A Haunting, Most Terrifying Places, Haunted Towns, and Haunted USA. This year, he made a cameo on several television programs, including Paranormal Night Shift, Hotel Paranormal, and Forbidden History. Sam is a highly sought-after lecturer who speaks at libraries and paranormal-related events across the country. And in the past, he has worked for VH1, MTV.com, Newsweek, and ABC Radio, as well as a regional stringer for the New York Times. So all 40 of us live and the hundreds who will watch later, let's give a big round of applause to Sam for joining us this morning. And Sam, you can take it away.
Hey, everybody. Thank you, Robert, for the introduction, and thank you for having me on this Zoom meeting. This is my first time, so I am a Zoom presentation newbie, so please forgive me if there's any technical issues. But mentioning Roxy Zwicker, she's a good friend of mine, and definitely recommend her presentation tomorrow night at 7 p.m. I think that Robert will be able to post a link for Roxy's tomorrow, and I'm sure hers is packed because they always are packed. But to give you some background with me, so I actually just published a book called Haunted Hotels of New England, and that book is a reissue of my 13 Most Haunted Hotels and Inns of New England, so I kind of changed the some of the locations based on whether or not some name changes, and then also some, I would say, became more haunted as well. So I'm going to switch over to my presentation, and hopefully this works. Okay.
So Sam, it looks like it's trying to work. We'll give it a few more seconds. There we go.
The new book, some people, I actually just ordered copies, and some people I have already received their copies, but my copies, the signed copies, haven't arrived yet to me, so I should be getting those either later this week or early next week. And to give you some also backstory with me, I have worked at a hotel for about 5 years now. I worked the overnight shift at various hotels throughout New England. Some of them were supposedly not haunted, and turned out that they were haunted after spending a couple of months working the overnight shift there. Some of them were notoriously haunted, and not very much happened while I worked at those hotels. But this is the trailer for my first book, 13 Most Haunted Hotels and Inns of New England. It's kind of give you an idea of where I started and where I am now. We're going to kind of go more into where I am now when it comes to haunted hotels. Listen up, guys and ghouls. It's Sam Beltruis, author of 8 historical-based ghost books, including Ghosts of Salem, Haunts of the Witch City. With Halloween creeping around the corner, I've unleashed my latest little monster, 13 Most Haunted Hotels and Inns of New England. From the Witch City's Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, to the spectacular Biltmore in Providence, to the bloodstained Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast in Fall River, I traveled all over New England in search of the 13 Most Haunted Hotels. My new book is coming out October 2017.
I hope you enjoy your stay.
All right, so that photo at the very end, as the hotel now is called the Graduate, and the Graduate is was the Providence Biltmore. And to give you, I have I think I have so just on the screen, but I actually have the key that was mentioned at the very end from the Providence Biltmore to kind of give you an idea of what led me to write the first book, 13 Most Haunted Hotels in New England. I had a key mysteriously sent to me, and I'll show you the key at the very end of the presentation, that was sent to me from the UK. And there was kind of a cryptic message that said, enjoy your stay, and no return address on the package from the UK. So that was the kind of the beginnings of me like looking at the Providence Biltmore, now the Graduate Hotel. And they have updated it, but it still is wicked haunted, as we say in New England. And it also is #2 on my most haunted list for the second time in a row in my new book, Haunted Hotels in New England. But before we get started, I want to talk about some of the basics when it comes to the paranormal. What are ghosts? There are several different philosophies or theories when it comes to what are ghosts. They're disembodied souls, is one way we look at spirits, potentially. I'm more in the school of #2, which is psychological imprints. And a psychological imprint is pretty much a residual haunting. If there was an extreme emotion at the location, and that is the case for hospitals, it's also the case for hotels as well. But whether it's good or bad, that can psychically imprint itself on the location. Now, there are also what are known as thought forms, or a tulpa. And I have been dealing with a stalker from Salem, Massachusetts, which is really close to Tewksbury. And we're going to talk a lot about that stalker shadow figure that's going to be featured in an upcoming episode of a show called Paranormal Night Shift, which is airing on August 19th on the Travel Channel. And that ongoing relationship with that shadow figure has been, I would say, pretty scary. And I'll kind of talk about like how that started. It actually started at a hotel that I worked at in Salem during the overnight shift. And speaking of Salem, there's also what is known as a time slip or a quantum event. And a time slip is where you walk into like a hotel or to a location and you
Did we lose you, Sam?
Lodge, which is a location where the 19 men and women who were innocent of witchcraft were executed and were hanged. And I walked in, and there was what appeared to be a woman kind of come out of the blue and walk up to me. And, she was wearing, I would say, like old-fashioned garb. And she's like, hello, what's going on here? And I said, ma'am, I'm actually taking pictures of Proctor's Ledge. This is where the Salem witch trials victims were hanged for witchcraft. And she said, I had never heard of such a thing. And then I was trying to explain to her about the different individuals, because I'm a tour guide in Salem. So of course I'm going to give her the backstory, and specifically that it was Sarah Good's birthday that day. And I basically was telling her about Sarah Good, who was the town beggar woman who was executed for witchcraft in 1692. And I asked her, like, ma'am, what's your name? And she says, well, my name is Sarah. And I'm like, oh, well, Sarah Good. And like, maybe like that's her name as well. And as I was talking about Sarah Good, I turned around and the woman vanished completely. And I was like, what was kind of interesting about that interaction is that was Sarah Good's birthday. So do I think that was Sarah Good? I'm not sure, but I do think that we do, that people the spirits do come to us in different shapes and forms, and I do think a time slip and a quantum event is very possible. Was that a time slip that day? I'm still not sure, but it is an experience that I had that kind of haunts me. And we'll talk about other things that happen at hotels that I've experienced along the way as well. Okay, why do ghosts stick around? Sudden death. A lot of times the spirits don't know that they died or that they passed. You'll see a lot of accidents, especially when in Salem or other locations where there were sudden deaths, like accidental suicide or accidental overdose, which that's going to leave a psychic imprint on a location. To watch over loved ones, and that definitely is the case in when it comes to my interaction with spirits. My father passed 2 years ago, and I rarely communicate with him. But I will say that I had a situation. My sister was hospitalized this weekend, and I had a visitation from my dad, like basically telling me to check on my sister, and my sister is fine. She had something that happened to her that was related to her, that we think it may be COVID. I've had experiences not only with him, but with my grandmother and my grandfather as well. Another reason why spirits stick around is because they are afraid to cross. Whether they committed suicide or bad deeds, you'll see over and over again. I write a lot of she's appeared to several people, and I think in her case, she wants someone to have to give her a name. Another reason why ghosts stick around is to watch over homes or beloved items. Now, when it comes to bed and breakfast, and which we have a lot of in New England, and also hotels, you'll see over and over again that they stick around because of looking over their business or their home. A lot of the old inns in Massachusetts were former homes, and they've been converted into bed and breakfast and inns as well. Another reason why they stick around is they've been being held there by an entity, and we'll talk a little bit more about that as we progress in this presentation. And also, they don't know that they are dead, which are also known as left behinds. And if you're a fan of the late, great Hans Holzer, if you watch the Holzer Files on TV, that was actually his theory when it comes to different types of ghosts, the left behinds theory, that a lot of the spirits that he encountered, they did not know that they were dead. Okay. And the types of hauntings at hotels, we have residual, and that's probably more the most common haunting from a hotel would be a residual haunting, and that is, it's like a psychic imprint that's left at a location, and it replays like a videotape that plays over and over again, and it's not, it kind of just walks by you and it doesn't interact with you. Now, if it's an intelligent haunting, then it does interact with you, and if you're an investigator, you'll be able to communicate with the haunting. A poltergeist is a hyped up intelligent entity. So if you have a phenomenon where things open, doors open and close, lights turn on and off, which is very common at hotels, that could possibly be a poltergeist. And the fourth and the least common experience entity would be a demonic entity. And I'll tell you, as someone who's been on multiple television shows over the years, the potential for a demonic entity is very, very rare. And in fact, I have been on shows where I clearly say I experienced an entity that was really, really angry. And of course, they change it to Sam confronted a demon. And so that's something you have to really look out for when you deal with the paranormal, that people, even though it's not demonic, people kind of portray it that way because it gets higher rating, especially if you're on television. Okay, so the Hat Man. So I'm going to walk over here really quick. Now, there's a figure that is known as the Hat Man that I experienced in Salem working the overnight shift back in 2018. The hotel, I'm not going to give you the name of the hotel, but it's a new hotel, and it's not the Hawthorne Hotel. And so I was working the overnight shifts, and it just opened. This hotel was a new hotel in a very historic building in Salem, and I was folding laundry downstairs, and I was, I was kind of, I've had sort of weird experiences at this location as I was working in this job. So I started in November 20. Kind of relaxed environment, except for the fact that it was extremely haunted. Uh, uh, when I say haunted, Salem is this haunted period. So the hotel was supposedly not haunted, but of course you're in Salem, you're going to have spirits and entities around you, and sometimes they may visit your hotel. Okay, so the first experience that I had was what looked like a black mass that emerged near the first floor elevator. When I say black mass, it's kind of like a cloud that just appeared. And what's interesting about this cloud-like black mass that I first saw was it kind of developed right by the front desk. It actually, the elevator opens and then the black mass goes into the elevator and goes down to the basement as if the black mass was taking an elevator ride to the basement of this hotel. So that was interesting. But I've seen all sorts of things in Salem, so that was a little shocking, but also for Salem, it's kind of commonplace. When I was working downstairs, it was very common, and this was under construction, the bowels of the building. Lights would flicker, and I heard the moans of what sounded like a man in pain. And I thought maybe that the man in pain was someone working next door. There were several businesses around this building and this hotel, and some of them I'm friends with. So I thought maybe they were working late. I wasn't really sure what or who was moaning in pain, but it was a very, very, very much in pain. This man that I heard was hurt, and I wanted to help him. Then I heard what sounded like someone banging a large piece of metal. Now, this was in January of 2018, and it was a really loud clanging noise that happened over and over again. And then I ran upstairs and saw a shadow man with a hat. Now, to give you some insight, I ran upstairs because I thought maybe someone was breaking into the store that was upstairs, or someone was in pain or hurt. So I ran upstairs, and then I saw it. I saw what looked like a man wearing a hat, and we made eye contact, and it had red glowing eyes. That's the part that scared me the most. I have never experienced a shadow person before. I've experienced other spirits, and I've had an attachment before, and still not sure if this is related to the attachment that was featured on the TV show A Haunting. But this entity was different. I know for a fact, and my first impressions of this entity was that maybe it was a person at one point, but I wasn't really sure. And then the more and more, if you read my book, Haunted Hotels in New England, this phenomenon known as the Hat Man is actually to shadow figures. And the Hat Man may just be wearing a hat to mimic, you know, a certain time period. Speaking of time slip from briefly about my Hat Man experience at the hotel in Salem. What we ended up doing was what is known as, it was an apology ritual. So I teamed up with my friend who was a high priestess, and she and I went to the Samuel Paris Foundation, which is an area outside of Salem proper. It's in modern day Danvers, and this is ground zero as to where the original witch trials, the initial affliction of Betty Paris and Abigail Williams took place.
As a result of the terrible miscarriage of justice in 1692, Salem historian Sam Baltrusis believes that Salem today remains cursed by the spirits of those wrongfully executed.
As someone who has written about the spirits of Salem and the impact of the Salem witch trials, I have to say that Salem, without a doubt, is the most haunted location in the country. What happened in 1692 left a psychic imprint on the land. The land is stained with blood.
Now, again, this story that first started at a hotel that I was working at during the overnight shift is turning into a paranormal, it's called a Paranormal Night Shift show coming out in August. So you'll be able to see the whole encounter with the man with the hat. And also, things have, since taping that show, I went to the Hawthorne Hotel in Salem. What was like a channeling session with the entity, and it was led by my high priestess friend Dana Masson, and she was asking questions, and we did confront the entity that's been stalking me for, I would say, about 2 years now in Salem when I give tours or work there at a hotel, and it said to Dana, and it walked into the room, you can hear the door opening and closing, and I couldn't hear it, but people watching the video could, and it basically said, when Dana asked, why do you follow Sam, or why do you stalk Sam, and it said energy, and then the other question was, are you human, and are you from this earth, and it said, I don't know. And the final question was regarding, like basically we tried to cut the cord with this entity, because while filming the Forbidden History show, that entity did attack Dana while we were filming it. So, and that was not on the show. It didn't appear in the show, but it was filmed. And what happened was I was kind of trans-channeling this entity. And while it was going on, Dana got scratched. And when you look at photos of it, it actually looks like she was bit. And why would the entity bite her? Probably because she was there to protect me, and she put up what is known as a crystal shield of protection while I was in this trans-channeling state. So this is all in my book, Haunted Hotels of New England, and it will also be featured partially in the show Paranormal Night Shift, which is airing on the Travel Channel in August. I know it's a lot of it.
Sam, this is Robert. Can you hear me, Sam?
I can. Yep.
So Sam, just so you're aware, and I'm not entirely sure, but I would say every 3 to 4 minutes, we seem to lose you for like 20 seconds. So so you're going in and out. We can hear about 85% of what you're saying, but for some reason, every once in a while, we lose you for like 20 seconds.
Okay.
I'm not sure there's anything you can really do about it, but just so you're aware.
Okay, I'm sorry about that. Maybe it's a connection, but I think it. Okay.
Just keep going. Yep.
Okay. All right, so we talked about my new book, Haunted Hotels of New England. This is the list of the most haunted hotels in the new book. So it's a different list than what was in the 13 most haunted hotels and inns of New England. As you can see, number 1 is the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast. Number 2 is the Graduate Providence, and that was the Providence Biltmore in the photo that we saw earlier in the presentation. Number 3 is the Orleans Waterfront Inn in Cape Cod. Number 4, Captain Grant's Inn. Number 5, the Omni Mount Washington in New Hampshire. This is a new hotel that's been added to my most haunted list, Concord's Colonial Inn, and this is after several spirited stays at this very haunted hotel in Concord, Massachusetts. Number 7, I put the Outlook, and that's actually a typo. It's supposed to be the it is the Outlook. And so this is in Rhode Island, and it was formerly known as the Pilgrim Inn, and they actually renovated it, and this is in Newport, Rhode Island. Number 8 is the Black Swan Inn in New Hampshire. Number 9 is the Charles Inn. This is in Bangor, Maine, and this is also in Stephen King territory. And I was able to go on what is known as the Stephen King tour, and it was an amazing tour with a gentleman named Stu Tinker, visiting all the locations that inspired one of my favorite authors, Stephen King. Number 10 is Longfellow's Wayside Inn in Sudbury, Mass. Number 11 is the Kennebunk Inn in Kennebunk, Maine. And number 12, Omni Parker House. And number 13 is the Hawthorne Hotel in Salem, Massachusetts. So this is my revised list. We did take off a few locations from the hotel list from 13 most haunted hotels and inns of New England, and added a few, including the Concord's Colonial Inn. Now, I'm not surprised that I was cutting in and out during the Hatman presentation, because I'll be honest with you, the Hatman is an energy vampire. And so it's very common to have technical issues with this entity. So hopefully things are going to get better as we proceed through this presentation. But I do think it has to do with the fact that I was talking about the man with the hat entity. And I'm sure you'll have questions at the very end, because if I was cutting in and out during the presentation. Okay, so one of the locations that I like to focus on is the Orleans Waterfront Inn, and this is in Orleans, Massachusetts, or Orleans, Cape Cod. All right, let's play the video. This is sort of like a behind the scenes of the Waterfront Inn. Our third most haunted crime scene is Cape Cod's Orleans Waterfront Inn. While researching my latest 13 most haunted book, I survived an overnight at the allegedly haunted Orleans Waterfront Inn on July 4th weekend in Cape Cod. Yes, the fireworks happened inside this historic structure. I chose the haunted spot, which is room 5. Not known to me at the time, my bed for the night made a cameo on an episode of Sci-Fi's Ghost Hunters. Built in 1875, the inn became a speakeasy run by the Irish mob, as well as a bordello. There was an unsolved murder on the premises involving a prostitute nicknamed Hannah. She was found dead outside of the inn and is believed to be the resident ghost. Various other apparitions were reported at this location, including 2 workers who committed suicide by hanging, and a naked woman dancing in the lobby. A hotel where guests check in but never check out. They're dying to have you stay. All right, so I gotta love my laughter there. But yeah, so with Orleans Waterfront Inn, so it's actually, I bumped it up to number 3. It was actually number 4 on my most haunted list. and I'm doing air quotes with the suicide in the structure back in the early 1900s. So it was built in 1875. It was nicknamed the Aaron's Folly because of its bad reputation. When I was there, I actually had an encounter with what I would call a ghost cat in room 4 and 5, and other people have reported a ghost cat as well. And what happened was that I felt like a sensation against my leg, as if a cat was rubbing against my leg, and there was no cat there. Guests refused to leave room 5 and became possessed, and this happened to multiple guests. And I was staying in that room, and what happened in the past, according to Ed Mass, who is the owner, he said that the woman she checked in for a few nights, refused to leave. He would knock on the door, ma'am, you have to leave. And he heard what sounded like German or another language come from the woman, as if she was possessed. And he didn't know German, but what that's interesting, the fact that he said German as opposed to another language. There was a hidden room in the lower level of the Orleans Waterfront Inn for bootlegged liquor. And also there was Fred the bartender, who reportedly hanged himself in the cupola. Fred was one of the people that we did contact during our investigation. And he told us over and over again that he did not commit suicide, that he was murdered. There is also a female spirit who roams the inn without clothes, and it was a house of ill repute. So we think perhaps that this structure was a bordello, or there was definitely things that were going on there that were kind of shady. So it's very possible that there was prostitution there, and we got that. When I say got that, we investigated. When we investigated, we picked up over and over again that there was definitely prostitution, and not in a good way. Like, it was not it was the women were forced to be prostitutes. There was possible activity in the downstairs bathroom. Another suicide that happened, and the man that was killed was German. So there's a lot of weird ties to Germans, and this is dating back to the World War II. So there may be some weird ties to World War II and Nazi Germany related to this inn as well. And so this is a quote from the book. But again, the suicides that were reported may or may not have been suicides, and they may have been something that was more along the lines of a murder. And this is Ed Mass, who is the owner, wonderful man. He said that his interaction with Hannah, he strongly believes that Hannah was one of the women that was murdered. She was shot outside of the inn, and she's the one that is haunting the hotel. As I said earlier in the presentation, a lot of times women or victims do not stick around unless they have unfinished business. I think in the case with Hannah, she may stick around because that's her home, and in fact, Ed gives her a lot of respect when it comes to. He's basically said over and over again, "This is not my end. This is Hannah's end," and so she kind of. It's her home, according to Ed and his wife, and she's definitely welcome there, and he's definitely made her let her know that he's staying at her house, and they seem to have a great relationship. Okay, so I am actually working with a Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when I get out of my presentation during the Q&A. But I specialize in the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast, and we have an event if you want to investigate the Lizzie Borden Breakfast. And because of the COVID lockdown, you're actually not able to go, and especially if you're out of state, but you can with this new show called The Dark Zone.tv. It's going to be a 4-day event. And it's for a small fee. You're able to watch the live feed over 24. It's basically 4 days in a row, and we'll be able to go inside. And I'm actually going to be at the investigation because I live close to the Lizzie Borden murder house. I have a lot of history there. We'll probably talk a little bit more about that when I get out of the presentation. But I do think that there is a reason why the Lizzie Borden Bed and Breakfast is #1 on my most haunted list for the second time in a row, and it's because it's wicked haunted. But if you wanted to sign up for this, you go to the darkzone.tv and you'll be able to get a ticket, and they'll give you access to the 4-day events, which I am a featured guest. And then for more information, go to sambaltrusis.com. And before I get out of the presentation, I just want to say, why are hotels more haunted than other locations? I think that, like hospitals, there's a lot of intense emotion, and there's a lot of people coming in and out of the hotels, leaving their psychic imprint on the location. Wherever there's intense emotion, there's going to be a proclivity for a haunting at that location. And I think with the case when it comes to hotels, there are both good hauntings when it comes to, say, weddings or proposals. That's going to leave a psychic imprint on a location just as much as a suicide or a murder. And also, you don't have to be dead to haunt a hotel. I have seen, working the overnight shift at my current hotel, what looks like a doppelganger. So I was working one night, and the hotel that I work at currently is in Quincy, Massachusetts, called the Adams Inn. A woman with a blue shirt on runs out of the elevator, and I see her, and then I ran up to talk to her, and she disappeared. Well, 10 minutes later, the same woman in the blue shirt came out of the elevator and ran up to me, saying, sir, I'm going to miss my plane to Florida. And this was in January of this year, before the COVID lockdown. And I'm like, man, were you just downstairs before? Because I thought I saw you. And she said, no, but I was dreaming, and I was having a dream that I missed my flight to Florida. So she may have been a doppelganger. So I think that some of the energy that is at hotels, the people don't have to be dead. They just left a piece of themselves at the hotel. And, and as my friend Tim Weisberg says, everybody leaves a piece of themselves when they visit a hotel, but make sure, if you do, to tip your housekeeper. So I'm going to exit out of this presentation. Okay. Hello.
We can see you, Sam. Great. Excellent.
Okay.
Yeah, you only broke up once towards the end, so that was great. So we.
And I really do think.
Yep. Go ahead, Sam.
I really do think that it's related to the entity that I was talking about, the man with a hat. So was it breaking up during that section, Robert?
Yes, it was. Yep.
Okay, that's why. It doesn't want to be talked about. So
Gail, folks, if you have questions or comments, feel free to get them into the chat. We did have a bunch come in. Gail wants to know, is there any way to buy a signed copy of your new book?
Yeah, so Haunted Hotels of New England is available on Amazon right now. And if you go to, I'll post a link later on my website to get a signed copy, because I have copies coming in. So yeah, there is a way to do it. I just have to arrange it.
Yep. So we'll check Sam's website in a week or two. Gail wants to know, why do you think you tend to see spirits more so than other people?
Well, I've always been sensitive. So getting to the Stanley Hotel. I was a big fan of The Shining growing up, and so I was also terrified of The Shining because I was like Danny Torrance. So I had a sensitivity to the paranormal as a young child, and that progressed as I got older. I had what are known as paranormal blinders, and so I would have experiences with dead people, and I would just kind of shrug it off as something that was explainable. And then as I started writing my books, my sensitivity to the paranormal became more and more to the point where now I identify as clairvoyant. In fact, I'm brought on a lot of these television shows as a clairvoyant, where I can actually read a location, the spirits at a location. So I'll see entities or spirits before your average person because I'm open to it. Yeah, do I see things that other people don't see? Absolutely. But my fellow clairvoyants and psychics can validate that. And a lot of times I'll go investigations with people who bring their equipment. And so I'm like, in the corner is an entity wearing a hat. And then also the devices that they have in the investigation will also validate that. So yeah, I'm definitely more sensitive than your average person.
A couple of comments also from Gail. She said, we stayed at the Providence Biltmore years ago. Definitely worth a visit to the lobby to see the water line from the hurricane of 1938. And Gail also says the Orleans Waterfront Inn has a restaurant with a terrific view. Great place for lunch or dinner, even if you can't stay overnight.
Absolutely. And so the key that I was talking about earlier, so this was the key that was mailed to me I would say about 5 years ago. And I don't know, Gil, I don't know if your key looked like this, but this is from the Providence Biltmore. And I was able, and I'm, in addition to being a clairvoyant, I'm a psychometrist. So I picked up energy, and it was a woman on her wedding day that I was getting from this. But I got this package out of the blue sent to me from the UK, and it said, the note in the package said, "Enjoy your stay," and without a return address.
Gail wants to know, why aren't you scared when you see spirits? Or are you scared?
Oh, well, Gail, I mean, I've been seeing spirits my entire life. So when I was a child, I was terrified. That's why I put on blinders. If you watch an episode called "Provoking Evil," it's called A Haunting, and it was on the Travel Channel. I was taken over by a spirit, and it was a murderous entity that almost killed me, and it was featured on the show. And after that experience, and it was removed by a shaman, but after that experience, nothing can scare me, because that was the worst. I've seen so much to this point where I'm not scared.
So I just want to say, folks, last call for questions. Let's get some questions into the chat. I do have a bunch from Michael. Michael wants to know, do you think there is evil at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast?
Well, as we kind of, I alluded to, that we're having the investigation, the darkzone.tv coming up, but I've done multiple investigations at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast, and there's something in the basement. And, is it an original ghost? I don't think so. A lot of people think that maybe it's Andrew Borden, who was, by the way, this is the day after the anniversary of the double homicide where Andrew Borden and Abby Borden were killed by hatchet, by, we think, is Lizzie Borden, but she was acquitted for the murders, for the double homicide. But yeah, there's something in the basement. It's been there since Zach Bagans and the crew from Ghost Adventures investigated it. Is it from Zach Bagans leaving a psychic imprint? Possibly. Was it an attachment that was kind of like just dropped off there? The fact that the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast is investigated over and over again, that also could stir the pot for the what I think is an inhuman entity that's lingering in the basement. But that's something for the show that I'm doing, the darkzone.tv. We're going to look into that inhuman entity that's lingering in the basement, and you'll be able to watch it online as I go in and basically risk my life in the basement of the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast. I'm scared of the very few locations, and I'm terrified of the basement at the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast.
Michael wants to know, in your opinion, do you think a haunting could be related to a touch every now and then? I keep feeling a single tap on my shoulder.
Yeah, so usually, and so Hollywood has a tendency of making everything evil, and it's not evil. A touch on the shoulder to me is someone trying to get your attention. So it could be a loved one. As a clairvoyant, I'm getting like a grandmother figure trying to get your attention. So I do think that our loved ones do reach out to us, especially like when my sister was in the hospital this weekend. My dad, who I don't connect with on a regular basis, came to me and said, "Sam, she needs to go to the hospital, check on your sister." And so, yeah, I think it's a spirit trying to get his attention.
Michael also says that he went to the Hawthorne in Salem. He stayed in its most haunted room. And when he was in the smaller part of the room, he kept feeling watched. And there was also a constant smell of perfume. So Michael,
yeah, that's weird that you say that, because I was just in the haunted room doing the Estes method. There was a woman, and she's not from the 1600s. She was actually from the 1800s, that had like a bun in her hair, sitting on a chair, and the perfume would make sense. And she was just sitting there like waiting for me in the haunted room. And Yeah, so there is a woman in that room, and she doesn't just stay in the haunted room. She also goes on the fifth floor and the sixth floor of the Hawthorne Hotel.
Let's see. Jean says that she slept in Emma Borden's bed, and her daughter slept in Lizzie's bed, and it's definitely haunted, she says. Megan wants to know, what brought you to your current hotel in Quincy?
The ghosts lead me to my hotels. So I go from hotel to hotel. So the one in Salem where I encountered the hat figure, the man with the hat, I only lasted there for about 3 months. So if I have an experience where I feel like I'm in danger because I'm clairvoyant, I will leave that location. And I did at the Salem Hotel. The one in Quincy, I've been there throughout the entire lockdown. And I'll tell you, I have stories from that hotel during the lockdown because it became extremely active during mainly like March, April, and May. We had limited guests, so we had probably around 5% to 10% of the hotel occupied, only with essential employees and people that were displaced from COVID. And I had multiple things happen, including what appeared to be a lady in white. So I was called to that location, and it turns out, and I currently work there, but it turns out that right outside of the hotel, that is where Whitey Bulger dumped his victims. And the lady in white is tied to, I believe, one of the victims from Whitey Bulger in the 70s.
We're going to take two more questions here. Gail wants to know, how do owners and staff of the hotel respond when you visit for your research?
Well, it really depends on that's a good question. A lot of the hotels, they realize that there's a whole tourism industry. People visit hotels because of the ghosts. So it really depends on on who I talk to. A lot of times I will talk to the night auditor because that's what I am as well. So I get a lot of my information from the night shift employees at the hotel, including Concord's Colonial Inn. The night auditor and I had an intense conversation, and that's what led me to add that hotel to my book. Locations like is it cutting out, Robert?
No, we can hear you.
Oh, okay, good. Locations like the Hawthorne Hotel, they kind of been in and out when it comes to their support of the paranormal community. They were investigated by ghost hunters, and ghost hunters said, oh, the Hawthorne Hotel is not haunted. So they used that to say, like, basically go on the record that the Hawthorne Hotel is not haunted. And I'll tell you, the Hawthorne Hotel is very haunted, but the owners, they feel like the ghosts scare away guests. And I'll tell you that they don't, for the most part, but I do think that if people have experiences, especially the Lizzie Borden bed and breakfast, I've seen people leave the hotels in the middle of the night because of the paranormal experiences that they encounter.
Gail says, this was great, thanks so much. Cindy says, I love Sam Beltruis. And so we'll end with Jessica here. She wants to know, and I don't know my New England geography real well, so I apologize if you mentioned it, but are there any haunted hotels or inns in Vermont? And Jessica was specifically, and I don't know how to pronounce this, but Quechee, Queechee, it sounds French to me, I don't know. Quechee, Vermont. Any around Quechee, Vermont?
There are multiple haunted hotels in Vermont. So getting back to the question regarding hotels being open to being featured in my books, Vermont, for whatever, every haunted inn that I reached out to, they did not want to talk about their ghosts. So I'm sure that there are haunted inns because there's haunted inns and bed and breakfast throughout New England, but Vermont as a whole was, I don't know why Vermont was so tight-lipped about their ghosts, but they really were. So every hotel that I reached out to said, yeah, we're haunted, but I don't want to be in your book. So it had to do with the fact that they did not give me access to their inns and hotels. So I'm not sure, but good question.
All right, so I think they're making fun of me in the chat for mispronouncing the name. That's okay. I don't see any other questions though or comments, so let's wrap it up here as my phone's ringing off the hook. Sam, do you have any last parting words for the group? Do you have anything, Sam, you want to say to end? I think Sam froze. That's just about how it's gone this morning. Okay, so we'll wrap up here, folks. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I want to thank the Friends of the Tewksbury Library for sponsoring, and just look for that email later today. Let us know what you thought of the talk and what you'd like to see for future talks. So thanks
All right,
you
hey,
all.
guys,
I hope
you
to
guys
see
have-
some of you
I'm back.
tomorrow night, and everyone have a great rest of the day. Thanks so much, Sam. You're back with
All
us.
right, bye. See you.
Yep. Bye-bye, guys. Everyone have a good night. Good day.